Hello, today I want to talk about upside and ways to take advantage of group play and item gifting for 0.9. Everything I'm talking about here is either based on what the dev said during the stream, the news post, the Discord, or the forum, but also speculation. Also, if you don't min-max, there are going to be points here that will impact you regardless, so I advise you to still watch that video, please. So let's talk about group play. It will be 4 people in a group at most. Everybody has its own instance of loot, which is going to be shareable if you drop the item in the same area. The only slot that is not shareable between different classes are helmet, body armor, and relic to some extent, because there are some common bases for relics. So if you don't play the same build and you're not playing the same class, this is basically loot times 3.5, but also there could be some overlap because you would want certain items, the same certain items, for example, rings or amulet, the same bases. But overall, it's pretty much a net game for item progression when you're in a group. Also, farming monoliths is probably going to be way more efficient in a group because how it works is you have the party leader that decides which echo to run. You will get the corresponding echo reward at the end. However, for all the other party members, they are not going to get the same echo reward. They're given a choice between 2 random ones. So this means that at high corruption, this is really powerful. Because at high corruption, what happens is that you avoid, no matter what, certain modifiers because of how they scale. So effectively, in my eyes, it is more efficient there than going solo. Also, getting to Empowered is going to be much faster. The campaign can be done much faster. You can split up for quests. And at Monolith, for the last 3 timelines, you can also split to do them all at the same time and regroup for the boss. My estimate is probably 4 hours for the most degenerate ones and probably 6 hours in solo. Also, your area pathing is going to be better than in solo. You will be able to spread to find multiple objectives, and the fact that you can portal to each other is also really powerful. Now, talking about synergies, obviously dealing more damage and being more resistant through buffs from your party means that you need even less gear to progress. For high-end player, this is already a problem. Maybe not for new players, obviously, because they don't really know the games well enough to see it, but Lizard made a great video about that. Also, talking about mobs, you have Agro, and having multiple person in a party means that you can split the aggro. We don't really know how it will work, but this is powerful for avoiding AoEs. Okay, what about dungeons then? You need apparently only 1 key per group to enter a dungeon. This doesn't really matter in terms of balance because you get tons of them in Empowered Monolith. It's more of a convenient thing, I believe. You also obviously find doors and you are able to compare them a bit faster in a group. Now let's talk about the Lightless Arbor dungeon, because this is probably the biggest thing in a group. So Mike said during the November 9th stream that you only need 1 person to pay the vote. This means that if you are in a party and you farm the same amount of gold, you effectively get 4 votes for the same amount of time farming as if you are in solo. And this is important because the real-time sync here is not actually running the dungeon or finding the keys, but acquiring enough gold for a good vault. And I think people don't realize how insane the vault is, because in the vault you can get all the rare crafting materials and the common one in crazy quantities. This is very reliable, especially if you're 4. You can get tons of uniques, and you can get tons of exalted items. I'm talking about 50 to 100 of them. It's completely crazy. Next, we have the Soulfire Bastion also. I don't know about that one. It's purely speculation there, but you know the Soul Ember that is used at the Soul Gambler at the end, that you farm on mobs during the dungeon? is, in my opinion, incredibly tedious to farm, even at low tiers, because of the layout of the dungeon. So maybe we can farm that more efficiently if we can spread and still get the Swember. I don't know. We'll see. What about crafting then? So we know shards will not be tradable at 0.9. However, we also know that if you craft on an item that is tradable, it will keep its tradability, meaning that you can effectively trade shards. So how do you do that? You will pick up a blue, you will use Rune of Removal to remove the affix. Ideally, you want only one affix on the item. Then you put the affix that you want instead. And you also want to have Forging Potential remaining after that, so that the person can use a Rune of Removal. Otherwise, he's going to have to use a Shattering Rune. Also, legendary crafting apparently is pretty interesting based on the dev response on Discord. You can apparently craft a legendary without removing the tradability of the item. If, for example, you are with a friend, you are playing all the time with him, but for some reason he's not there that night, and you drop a really cool weapon, a really cool exalted weapon that you could use to craft a cool legendary, you could effectively craft the legendary with that weapon later when you play with him, if a unique drop with LP. And this means that you can trade that item even though it dropped when it was not tradable. I think this is a very particular case, but it's pretty cool, and I hope they keep that into the game. Also, I want to talk a little bit about other types of characters that could appear, specialized character, that's what I call them. I've seen that happen in Diablo 2 and Pass of Exile, where you have Speed Farmer, I call that Echo Farmer here, boss killers, and support characters. So instead of having a character that can do everything in the game, you would have characters that do only one thing, but really well. I also want to talk about what the community could do with party and item gifting. So boss killing services. There could be services like boss killing, and people, what they would do is that they would kill your boss for the loot it dropped. For whatever reason, you can't kill that boss at that time, or your build is not designed in a way that it can't kill this boss. This could potentially be, by the way, the fastest way to acquire 4 LP boss drop, because the boss killer would not have to do the timeline, and if there is enough demand, he will just do carries again and again until he gets the 4 LP that he wants. Also, boss rotation. So not talking about carries, just you farm the timeline, you get to the boss that you want to get the loot from, and you can effectively team up with 3 other people that did the same thing, and you get 4 times the loot because you get 4 boss fights. Next is dungeon carry. Right now I see only 2 applications. You have the Temporal Sanctum for crafting the legendary if someone doesn't have the character strong enough to do it in like T4. And also unlocking T4 to get a carry then, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. This might also evolve with future addition to the dungeon roster. However, you also have vault rotations, like I talked about previously, where instead of an organized party, you would have 4 solo players that would party, and each player has to pay 1 vault, and effectively you have more loot out of the vault. Yeah, this could also be a thing, I believe. And lastly, support characters. This one I'm not really sure, because even though it could potentially enable solo players to farm very high-end corruption, this is not PoE, and the values that we have in solo player, they're going to change. They said they're going to balance things for multiplayer, so we don't really know how much people will be able to do a dedicated support character. We'll see. And the final 2 topics that I want to talk about are power leveling, which could be made super easy with Arena, because it gives XP, and that amount increases with waves. So you would get a key for wave 400 because you did 800 before. And this is also on the condition that you get XP even though you're dead, because you would be under level and under geared. And we have power progression, which is also super easy to set up. All you have to do is set up all the timeline bosses and do all of them one after another. So you would unlock Empowered Monolith and all the timeline in like 15 minutes. So that's it for me. If there are things that I missed, please tell me. I honestly love that kind of stuff in RPGs. Yeah. You guys, bye bye.